Are we free? Are we free? Well, nobody's holding us in chains, thank God for that. But are we free? That's the question you should ask. That's what you should be thinking about. That's what you should be discussing. That's what we don't know what the Chachamim discussed, because they were discussing their own freedom, their own contemporary issues. We'll discuss our contemporary issues. So we have about 10 minutes left. I'm going to take some questions, and then I'm going to transition to the next part of the class. So if there are any questions, you may ask them now.
So Rob, I want to ask you, when you were talking about giving up in the first part, physical desires, that was kind of like, would you consider Pesach, in a sense, the fact that you don't have matzah, that you don't have bread and stuff like that, do you feel like in a sense there is like this greater sense of, material abstinence?
Absolutely. Absolutely 100%. You got it precisely. You got it precisely. We don't need this, delicious food to celebrate our freedom. We're okay with matzah because the main thing of freedom is not the physical pleasures. Just about that, I want to give an entire class. I'm not even going to answer your question because it's so good that I want to give a class about it to answer the question. Okay, maybe we'll see. But you're absolutely right. Any other questions? There are questions, comments, objections. No, good. Okay, negations. Okay, let's continue.
Interesting how you brought it, that it's possible that their current day situation that takes hours and hours to discuss because we don't know the content, and it could be how do we address our moral compass with the outside world that's right in front of us, that we're stuck in, and they were right there.
So you gotta, so you have to figure out also how to say it in a way that doesn't offend people. You don't want people to get offended. You have to. It's an art. Jewish rhetoric is so emphasized by the Gemara because we wanted to be able to express our ideas in a way which would be beautiful and desirable by the people around us. So you have to look at the people around you and understand what their limitations are, who you're talking to, and get, that's why Aggada you might have a Chacham in the room, speak to them like a Chacham. You might have a Rasha in the room, okay, it happens, speak to them differently. You might have a Tam, you might have Shenu Yishon. So I gotta figure that out, and you do what you can do. You can do what you can do, but we had this, I think this is great that we did this together, because I know what's gonna happen. United Pesach, you're gonna be saying, are we slaves now though? Are we? What's going on? Do we need to, oh yeah, that's interesting, the connection. You'll all make that connection. Judah, yes?
I was wondering, not theologically that we were bad in sin and that's why we became sins, but historically, do we know what led to the slavery back then? Since we're supposed to live and think, are we free now, and live like today like it was then, and learn from the history. So what happened?
So first, that's a great question. It really is, and there's a part in Aggada which starts with the words Arami Obed Avi. And Rambam actually says about that part of the Aggada that there's an extra mitzvah to discuss Arami Obed Avi, more so even than other parts of the Aggada. And Arami Obed Avi, it actually answers that question. Why did we go down to Egypt in the first place? Why did we have to suffer? And the answer, I can't just do it in one kind of sitting. That's actually was going to be maybe the subject for another class. So that's two classes. The matzah, these are good questions. They're good questions. I don't want to just say, oh, here's the answer, because then you can say, oh, I don't know. But if I develop it nicely and I give you the full, idea, it would mean something. But just Arami Obed Avi, basically, the Hachamim say we went down to Egypt because the brothers were fighting, and there's a certain, there's a certain kernel there that allows me to understand what happened, but it's just that kernel, and it's not enough. So for now,
it's like, did we make a mistake? If we could have, Back to the Future, could we have made the right turn and avoided it? Or is it we sinned in any way? It was predicted?
I think it wasn't so much a mistake. In the case of Sally Yosef, that was of course a mistake, and it was terrible. I'm gonna put it right there. But I think it was just part of developing as a nation. Part of developing as a nation is look at the world around you and understand who they are. Are you one of them? You don't feel like you're one of them? Are you capable of taking an Egyptian baby and throwing it into the Yeor? You're not, are you? So you're not one of them. But in order to understand that, because when you see the Goyim, what do you see of the Goyim? You see Hollywood. There's heroes, right? There's heroines. everybody is a hero or heroine. There's very, 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 very bad people, right? But it's not real. You know, it's just silly stories. Most part, in the most part, right? The point being that when you're with them, I remember my father used to say this Arabic saying. I wish I knew it. Like, if you're not with them, you don't know them. Where's Mr. Hassan? He's not here today.
No, it's like
All right, Chazal. You know, so when you're inside, you get to know them, you understand them, you say, I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them. I want to be something different. Right? So that's part of it, but that's like an incomplete answer. So if you're dissatisfied, you should be, because it really wasn't a complete answer. I want to do, we only have about 5 minutes, and this is an important part of the seder. It's a part of the seder where we sing "והיא, שעמדה לאבותינו ולנו," right? You know, it's a very beautiful song. You know, what's the name of that singer that does it so beautifully? Shweki, right? Right, he's had a very beautiful version of it, right? He sings it really beautifully. He comes to Israel and everybody sings along. It's really nice. It was during one of the wars in Israel where there was like missiles falling all over the place, flying all over the place. You were a little boy. I don't know if you remember. We were once stuck out outside in the street, and there was like missiles flying, and then somebody led us into their store to, for protection. But I remember going to the park. There was like a respite in the middle of the war. It was like nice, and everybody went to the park. It was a very beautiful, beautiful park in Ra'anana. And everybody was there, and on the radio, it was like just public radio. Usually they have rock stars. I don't know what are they names of singers. I just don't know. Okay, whatever, names of singers. Yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, But instead of that, they were having "והיא, שעמדה לאבותינו." They were singing. It was on the radio. I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Because people really felt a sense of God's protecting the Jewish people, and it was just like that was the song on the radio. It was like amazing. So I want to tell you there's so much to say about that, but we're saying that when God spoke to Abraham Avinu in Berit Ben Abetarim, in Parashat Lech Lecha, God promised Abraham Avinu that his children, right, will eventually reach Eretz Yisrael. It was a solemn oath on the part of God towards Abraham. Your children will enter the land of Israel, they will inherit the land of Israel. Right? And he tells them about that's going to happen in Egypt, and so everything is said in Berit Ben Abetarim, and we say in Aggada something very beautiful. What we say in Aggada is that promise that Abraham received from God, we are the children of Abraham, that promise protects us till today. It didn't just protect our fathers in Egypt, it did protect our fathers in Egypt. When we left Egypt, we didn't leave because we were worthy somehow, or we were all tzaddikim. We weren't all tzaddikim. We weren't worthy. God took us out of Egypt because he promised Abraham Avinu there's going to be a 400-year deadline. Right? Not that there were slaves 400 years, it doesn't matter, it's not the point now to explain what the Abraham is, but there's a deadline. And I will take them out of their slavery. That was a promise, that was an oath. And we're saying, we say that oath applies to us until today. What protects us today is that oath. When I was in Israel and there was wars, and it was, I used to go study, I used to study Torah half a day, and I was in a very nice place with boys who, they were, there was a kollel, where what happened is they would study Torah, and then they would go out and become rashi yeshivot, or teachers, or principals in different schools. And the rule in that kollel is if you want to be in that kollel, you have to be in the army. It was like a rule, you have to be a soldier. So it was very nice. Anytime there was a war, they would leave, and I would be left alone, or there would be a few people left, depending. And they would all come back 20, 30 pounds lighter. It was incredible. Not that they were so overweight before, but literally emaciated. After a month of war, you literally just lose all your weight. It's incredible. And then the thing is so tell us what miracles happened. It was never, did a miracle happen? That was never the question. Did you experience, what miracles did you experience? And they all had these incredible stories. I mean, really amazing stories. And I always think about Berit Ben Abetarim. I always think about that. It's so important. Because sometimes you have Israeli generals, and they aren't properly raised. Nobody taught them Torah. They're we have the best army in the world. We have the best soldiers in the world. I mean, we do. We have beautiful soldiers. They're so committed. It's so beautiful. As you know, my son Joey was special forces. They just took him to the reserves. So They are the best soldiers. They're amazing. What spirit they have within them. But it's so important to say, God is there. You can have the best soldiers and everything can be great and you have the best weapons and you can still mess things up terribly. You know, you're supposed to thank God for this. You can't ignore God. It upsets me when I hear some of these soldiers. So I just want to read to you. Would it be okay if I take 2 minutes to read to you? And it's like random. I could have brought hundreds of stories. This took place in the Yom Kippur War. I was in Israel during the Yom Kippur War. So it's personal to me because I remember what it was like being in the dark rooms. They had us cover the windows, no lights because of the Syrian airplanes flying over the house. They saw light. They know, oh, that's a good place to shoot. Let me just read to you. We have about 2 minutes. You good? You good?
Sure.
Article written by Shirash Sorkoram. Don't know who that person is. 21-year-old Lieutenant Zvika Greengold was home on leave at his kibbutz in Western Galilee. It was Yom Kippur. He was spending the day. He was spending the holiest day of the year in his house. And then he saw these airplanes flying above, Syrian airplanes. He understood something is very bad. It's Yom Kippur. I was in synagogue at the time. I remember suddenly in the middle, there was like sirens going off, and the Hazan had to leave. Hazan never came back. He never came back. Anyway, so let me just make this story short. At the time, Zvika wasn't yet assigned to a unit because it was complete mayhem, by the way. The Israeli army was complete, total mayhem. Nobody knew what is going on, okay? He goes to his base. The whole base is already destroyed by Syria. He hikes 78 miles, because it's Yom Kippur. Nobody's using cars, there's no buses. He hikes 78 miles. He reaches his base. The whole base is destroyed. The tanks are destroyed. There's like 2 or 3 tanks around. There was a point where he takes a few boys who weren't completely injured. There was a point where there was 3 tanks, 3 Israeli tanks against 150 Syrian tanks. Okay, and by the way, this has all been validated historically. This is a major battle where these 3 tanks that were dilapidated, for example, the tank that this guy was in such bad shape that when he shot the first artillery round, the whole tank literally flipped over, and then he had to get another tank because that's how dilapidated the tank was. It couldn't even shoot around without flipping over. It got demolished. 3 tanks against 150 Syrian tanks. And the Syrians, they could have just gone literally straight down to Tiberias, and it was so open that the Syrians were like, we're going to be ambushed. They're ambushing us. There was nobody there. There literally was nobody there. So there was a point in the, I'm not reading it to you, I'm just telling you what happened. There was a point in the story where the head of the command is speaking to Zvika. So how many people are you? A lot of people. They couldn't tell them there were only 3 tanks because there was like hundreds of Syrian tanks, and they were spying. And if he said with 3 tanks, we need help, please, like send somebody, we need help, it would have been over. The Syrians would have just like gobbled them up. But there were 3 tanks over there, and they were fighting against these hundreds of tanks, and for some reason the Syrians started retreating. It was almost like, it's really incredible. After 30 hours, finally reinforcements came. The guy was in his tank for 30 hours, no food, no sleep, getting bombed, and he said, and he literally collapsed. I just took him straight to the hospital. This guy basically stopped the Syrian advance in the Golan Heights. And if you don't believe in God, I can't help you. Because it's just like, these stories happen so much. This isn't one story, there's not 10 stories, there's not 100 stories. Every single war, every single battle that Israel goes on, there's these incredible miracles that happen. And that's why when you say, "והיא שעמדה," sing it, it's a beautiful song, but think about what you're saying. God is protecting us till today. Every generation until today, we are under God's protection. So enjoy Pesach. It's a beautiful holiday.
One second. Sing it.
והיא חננה, wait, let me take it, right? והיא חננה, שאומר, ועשה הקדוש ברוך הוא לזכות את ישראל, לפיך נדבר למקרא המסורת שנאמר, אברהם בזמן שצוע יקדים תורה,
מתקדש מהר הבא, דיברה כרותי והמליך מחותי, ושמח מתקדם וקרב משתה, וחי יכול במקום, וחי יכול בית ישראל, ועריבה למען קריב,
אמן.